everyone wants to talk about Mark Pope and his offense and how he's going to bring in players that run around and shoot a ton of threes. But Kentucky's latest transfer portal addition may just be the best perimeter defender in America.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing the latest transfer portal commitment to the Kentucky Wildcats. That's right, Lamont Butler out of San Diego State has committed to UK, the second transfer portal addition for Mark Pope in the portal. Going to talk about him, going to discuss a couple of other players in the portal that Kentucky has reached out to that I'm very interested in. We're going to wrap up the show talking about a Baylor decommit that could maybe follow new Kentucky assistant coach Alvin Brooks. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a pretty competitive side, and we all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go today, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Lamont Butler out of San Diego State has committed to the Kentucky Wildcats, played 4 seasons with the Aztecs before committing to Kentucky through the portal. According to various sources online, there was some plane tracking going on earlier today, April 26th, and it looked like Kentucky was flying out to Vegas, according to a couple of assistant coaches' stories. The entire staff was flying out to Vegas to go meet a potential portal player, and a lot of people thought it was Washington State's Jaylen Wells, we will talk about later on in the show. But it ended up being Lamont Butler, and it was a revelation, I think, to kind of look up and see, like, oh, hey, not only is Kentucky going after a transfer portal player, like meeting him right now that we had no idea they were going to meet, he's committed. Like that. Like, it is just Kentucky. It's fascinating to me the way that they're operating in the transfer portal right now. I think that at the beginning of the process with Pope, a lot of information was made public. And I think Kentucky, therefore, because of that, they missed out on a couple of different pieces. Mark Pope has very clearly shown over the last 48 hours that he and his staff want to operate in silence for the most part. We had no idea that Otega Dawe was going to be visiting transfer guard from Oklahoma. We had no idea that Dawe was going to be visiting Kentucky, and yet he did yesterday. We didn't know that Kentucky was going to fly out and go get Lamont Butler today, but they met him, and then within about a 15-minute span of that news breaking, things started to really get the ball rolling, and then Butler eventually committed. So very excited about the way that Mark Pope is handling himself in the transfer portal, somewhat of a silent assassin so far with some of his commitments. I want to talk about Lamont Butler here, though, and talk about just how good I think he could potentially be for Kentucky. And I said on yesterday's show, Lamont Butler is not a good shooter. And objectively, he's not a great shooter. But what he is an elite defender. Lamont Butler may very well be the best perimeter defender, three-point defender in college basketball, and he's proven that for a couple of years now. You go and look at his his statistics from a season ago, 9.3 points while shooting 42.1% from the floor. He shot 30% from three, just 59% from the foul line. He averaged 2.5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. Lamont Butler played primarily at the 2 guard for San Diego State, but also had a little bit of run at point guard for the Aztecs on occasion. Again, like I mentioned, it's not about the offense, I think, necessarily for Lamont Butler. It's about the defense. Look at the accolades. 2023-24 Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year. He was 2022-2023 All Mountain West Conference. 3 different times he made the Mountain West Conference All-Defense team. And as we all know about Lamont Butler, he has hit a couple of really big shots, and I think arguably one of the biggest shots in college basketball history, and definitely one of the biggest shot, I should say, in SDSU history against Florida Atlantic in the Final Four just a couple of years ago to send SDSU to the national championship. We all remember that moment. And yeah, that kid's coming to the University of Kentucky. That excites me to have all of that wrapped up into one. Statistics aside, the man knows how to play basketball. He's an experienced, hard-nosed guard, and we can sit here and talk again about like how everybody, myself included, has wanted to focus on offense this, offense that, 5-out spacing, Mark Pope's system, as we've continued to say. And the first 2 commitments Kentucky has gotten are kids that can pass really, really well. Don't get me wrong. I think his ability to pass the ball around Butler's is underrated, as is Amari Williams. But it's not about the offense. It's about how good they were defensively. 3-time conference DPOI in Amari Williams, 3-time All Mountain West defense, and then 1-time DPOI for Lamont Butler. Kentucky is going out and getting some very physical, hard-nosed players, something that they lacked last year, like tremendously lacked a season ago. So Kentucky, I think right now, it's really interesting to watch what they're doing in the transfer portal as far as like what we think the personnel is going to look like and now kind of what they're actually going after. Now, does this mean Kentucky's going to go after a bunch of low shooting percentage, hard-nosed, like really elite defensively guards? No, I don't think they're going to necessarily do that. In fact, I think there's going to be a couple of kids that visit this weekend that are going to be really good outside shooters that kind of can play that wing spot that really do fit what Mark Pope wants to do well. But the first 2 guys here, solid. I think they're very solid. You look at some more of Lamont Butler's numbers here in depth. He shot 50% at the rim, which was half of his field goal attempts. He's a very solid, just like a straight line driver, just like getting downhill, getting to the basket. He did not score a ton in transition, but I think that had to do with a lot of the fact that he was not like the primary go-to scorer for San Diego State. San Diego State didn't really play in transition a ton. I believe they had Jayden Wells, who was really, really good in the front court, so most of the things were going to him, and the offense was slowed down. But just because he didn't score in transition a ton doesn't mean he can't, and I think that his highlight reel does reflect that he could be somebody that can just kind of barrel downhill and get you a bucket at the rim. He is not a great outside shooter. He shot 28% on left break threes, which was 14% of his field goal attempts. That is subpar. He shot 34% on right break threes, which were 13% of his field goal attempts. That is right at average. He had a 21% assist rate. I think this kid is an underrated passer. I think that number reflects that. I think that he works really, really well on and off the ball. He's good off of ball screens, getting downhill, finishing at the rim, like I said. He's also really good in the pick and roll. He can throw lobs. He's also good off of curls on and off the ball, whether it be curling off of screens with the basketball, getting to the rim, whether it be curling off of screens without the basketball and being the recipient at the rim. So he is all around a good basketball player that's played 4 years of college, is going to step up into a conference that I think he can play really well in as far as the SEC goes. Good spot-up shooter, good at the rim, average three-point shooter on occasion. Not the most phenomenal inside the arc, but he does some serious damage in the mid-range as well. He is not good off of the dribble consistently, like pulling up off of the dribble shooting. He's in the 19th percentile in terms of his effective field goal percentage. I think that the way Kentucky wants to utilize him, his statistics will improve. How significantly how much will they actually improve? I don't know. I think they will improve, and I think that Kentucky's going to utilize his 2 strengths, passing and defense, and that's kind of going to be his calling card. Will he start for Kentucky? Almost definitively at that 2-guard spot, if I had to guess, or at point guard for UK. Because he has started for however long at SDSU. My guess is that he's not coming to Kentucky to come off the bench, and quite frankly, I don't know if he should because of how good he is on the defensive end. So that's Lamont Butler. Really excited about this pickup. Let me know what you think in the comments below about Butler and whether or not you think he fits the system, whether or not you think that he's going to be really good. I think that there's a lot of high upside here as a 5th-year player transferring to the SEC in a more high-octane system. Really good defense, man. Just really, really good defense. Getting what Kentucky needed last season. Let me know what you think. All right, we've got two more players I want to talk about here in the transfer portal that Kentucky has contacted. One of them was a all-conference selection. The other one may very well stay in the NBA draft. Both are very, very good. Let's talk about them here in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, continuing along here on the, is it Friday? Yes, Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Goodness gracious, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel already, please go ahead and do so. Man, oh man, oh man, what a great pickup for Kentucky basketball. And I think that this will be one of the two cornerstones I can imagine for Kentucky defensively, alongside Amari Williams, Lamont Butler out of San Diego State. Actually, if you have not joined the Locked On Kentucky Discord already, link is in the description to do that. Got about 160 of you in there. And one of you actually just said a minute ago something about how you have always said Kentucky has needed a Davion Mitchell type point guard. And I wouldn't necessarily say this is a Davion Mitchell type player, because Mitchell was better in terms of just outside shot, but in terms of shot creation, in terms of his mid-range, in terms of what he brings as a guard defensively, Lamont Butler absolutely fits that criteria. So I really, really am excited about this pickup. Let's talk about two players here. Let's talk about two players in the transfer portal that Kentucky basketball has reached out to and are very, very good, in my opinion. Let's begin here with Kadary, Richmond, out of Seton Hall. In case you don't know about Richmond, Richmond has played 3 years at Seton Hall with the Pirates, started his career at Syracuse as a freshman, averaged 6.5 a game as a freshman at Syracuse, which was actually pretty solid. Then he transferred to Seton Hall, and this past season, take a look at these numbers with me. 15.7 points per game, shooting 44.1% from the floor and 27% from three. We're going to get to that number in a second. Just hold out. 80% from the foul line. He averaged 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, half a block, and almost 16 points per game. Again, if we're just talking about shooting numbers, let's take the 27% from three and let's put it aside. If I did not tell you that this man shot 27% from outside the arc a season ago, you'd look at him averaging almost 16, 7, 5, and 2.2 steals per game, and you would say, excuse me, I'm sorry. That's a 6'5", 180-pound guard that could play the 2 or the 3 in Mark Pope's system? How much money do we have to throw at him to get him here? Because I would love to have him on the roster. And then you see that percentage, and you're like, okay, this is not necessarily what we want to go for here. But I want to make this very clear. This is, alongside Butler, a player that Kentucky could get and turn into a really, really good weapon. Not like he wasn't at Seton Hall to begin with, by the way. Shooting really well from the line, really, really solid assist rate, top 40 in the nation in assist rate. Also was a really solid defender as well. This kid has everything but the outside shot. And the thing is, the best part about Kadary Richmond, go and look at some of his numbers. He doesn't take a ton of three-point shots. He only took 63 three-point shots last year. Year before that, he only took 36. He was 16 of 36 and shot 44% from beyond the arc in just the previous season. So this was a big dip. He was asked to shoot just a little bit more from beyond the arc, and he did not deliver consistently. But whenever he was in years past, whenever he wasn't taking a ton of threes, the kid was electric as just an overall ball player. Solid assist rate, really high steal rate. He gets to the foul line. He's a really good foul shooter, has significantly improved as a foul shooter, by the way, over the course of his collegiate career. Defensively, he's there. The height is there. The scoring overall is there. He can get to the rim. He can finish with efficiency. The kid is explosive. The kid is entertaining. This would be a really, really good addition to Kentucky basketball. The only concern for me is scouting somebody like Kadary Richmond and looking at the personnel that he runs with in a Mark Pope system, quote unquote. What I mean by that is, let's say Kadary Richmond is somebody that Kentucky likes to throw out there consistently in the rotation, whether it be he starts or whether it's a sixth-man type of role. My guess is that he would start. That would be ridiculous to think that he wouldn't, but let's just say that he starts for Kentucky, right? If they rotate, if he starts with whoever, can those other players around him shoot? Not can they, will they take outside shots? Okay, if you look at who Kadary Richmond rotates with as far as whenever players come off the bench, what are the most common lineups with him? Does Kentucky insert shooters into that lineup that can hit and will take the shot? Because the scouting report then would be very simple with Kentucky. Oh, they have two non-shooters at potentially solid shooting positions on the court. Let's focus on really packing it in and making those guys try and take those outside shots and kind of working on whether or not they have some sort of confidence issue, or to see if we're just going to get them off on a bad day. Because my guess is you won't be able to find consistent shooting if you look at a guy that's not taking them and is only hitting them at a 27% clip. Like if you are asking him, hey, shoot more, and giving him more opportunities, my guess is that his percentage is not going to ratchet up by a significant amount. But all of that to say, that's my only concern. If Kentucky plays him with shooters, that's a nightmare matchup. That is a nightmare matchup for opposing teams. Because again, let's take it back. 5.1 assists as a 6'5" guard and 7 rebounds. 2.2 steals. This kid does everything else. He can get to the rim and score. He distributes the basketball incredibly well. If you want to put Kadary Richmond one-on-one driving to the cup, you know what? Go ahead and do that, because if he doesn't want to score, he's going to kick it out and he's going to find somebody wide open for three. This would be a great pickup. I love this pickup potentially. We'll see what Kentucky basketball does with it. Let's talk here for a little bit more about Jaylen Wells out of Washington State. Jaylen Wells has declared for the NBA draft also, while keeping his options open to return to college and enter the transfer portal. 12.6 points a year ago, shot 43.6% from the floor and 41% from three. He averaged 4.6 rebounds and 1.2 assists per game to go along with those 12.6 points. Jaylen Wells primarily started at the small forward position for the Washington State Cougars a year ago, and it is actually interesting at 6'8", 205 pounds about how Kentucky may want to utilize him, because my guess at 6'8", 205 is you're not going to have a 6'8" small forward. You can slide him down to the floor and play a little bit differently, because if you have somebody like Kadary Richmond in your lineup at 6'5", you have somebody like Lamont Butler. All of a sudden, if you pick up one more transfer, then you'll have like, or even then, you could still like have a lineup of like really tall backcourt, tall wing, tall power forward, and then Amari Williams, Great Osabor, what have you at center. We'll see what happens with Osabor over the weekend, by the way. Aiden Mahaney, by the way, out of St. Mary's, who's a really good player, is going to be visiting Kentucky this weekend, is going to be in the mix. Well, this is probably going to be the last recording that you and I have, the conversation. This is going to be the last conversation that you and I have about Kentucky in the transfer portal, and with them only having 4 players on the roster. We're probably going to get multiple guys here over the next few days. At least I hope. Knock on wood. My guess is that this coaching staff is going to be able to pull it out, because they've been working their tails off, and I've been very, very impressed with the way that they've operated so far. So, Kadary Richmond, Jaylen Wells. Jaylen is a really, really solid player. I believe You look at his numbers from a season ago, he was almost top 100 in three-point percentage at 6'8". He actually did take a decent amount of threes, took 168 of them. See, that's what I'm talking about with Richmond. You got a guy that only took 63 threes at a guard position, and you got Wells, who took 168 at small forward, power forward. It's like that works really well in a BYU system, in a Mark Pope system. You get what I'm saying here? It's a really, really, really solid combo that we're talking about here today. Who knows what's going to happen with them? Jaylen could stay in the NBA draft. Kadary could go elsewhere. If Kentucky can get one of these guys or both of them, that would be a really, really solid combo. If you could get them with a guy like Lamont Butler and then go and get somebody like an Elijah Hawkins, like a Devon Smith, somebody that can really pass the rock around while also having a bit of a solid outside shot as well. This fires me up. The players that Kentucky basketball is looking at in the transfer portal, they aren't just like there. They're good. They're genuinely good, and I'm very excited to talk with you guys about it. So again, if you've not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, now is the time to do it because it's going to be a really, really fun summer. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's talk here about one more player. I got one more player to talk about. And he is a decommit from the Baylor Bears after Alvin Brooks III moved from Scott Drew's coaching staff to Mark Pope's. Does Kentucky land him? What does he even look like? Let's talk about this player in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Monopoly Go. I have a pretty competitive side, and we all do. And my competitive side is a really big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, and it is a great twist on classic Monopoly, where you play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part about this game is I get to play it with my friends and mess around with them. Been playing it for a few months now. It's been super, super awesome to get kind of going, and we've continued to add more friends into the fold, and as our group gets bigger, it gets even more chaotic. I can charge rent on iconic properties to my friends, just like classic Monopoly. I can now also heist their vaults and steal their riches for myself, and the leaderboards can show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. I won't mention them by name because then they will get a big head, but it is not me at the top of the leaderboards across my friends. But it's not just the competitive side, right? It's not being able to kind of go against your friends and have some fun. You can also team up with them and join people around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or on Google Play. All right, wrapping up the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I'm going to reiterate this one more time. It feels like literally less than 24 hours ago, I was sitting here talking with you on Monday about what could potentially happen this week with transfer portal news and all that good stuff. And here we are Friday already. We're about to see a ton of visits this weekend. It's going to be a fun weekend for Kentucky basketball. So let's talk about one more player here, a decommit from the University of Baylor Bears. Alvin Brooks III, obviously we talked about him on a recent episode about how he has moved from Scott Drew's coaching staff to Kentucky's really, really solid recruiter. All he has done is recruit studs, 4 5-star players. He has recruited, and then a little-known JUCO transfer from a community college out in Heartland. His name is Noah Boyett. He is a 7-foot center, and he is decommitted from the Bears. He is one of the top JUCO prospects in the country in McCook Community College. And here's what he had to say on social media. With recent developments at Baylor University, I am respectfully requesting my release from the basketball program to explore other opportunities. I want to express my sincere gratitude to Coach Scott Drew for believing in me and providing me an opportunity with the opportunity to be a part of the team. While this decision is not easy, I am eager and excited to see what the future holds for me both on and off the court. Thank you for your understanding and support during this time. Really, really solid player. He chose Baylor over California, Colorado, Nebraska, Northern Illinois, Ohio State, Oklahoma, UAB, and Washington State. Last season at McCook Community College, Boyd posted some impressive numbers. The 7-footer averaged a near double-double over 31 games played, 11 points and 8.5 rebounds per contest, shot 56% from the floor. Most notable thing here, now that Brooks is on Kentucky staff, the man enters the transfer portal, Boyd does, immediately after, and immediately starts his statement by saying, "With recent developments at Baylor University, I'm respectfully requesting my release from the basketball program to explore other opportunities." I would be surprised if Kentucky doesn't give him a call, and my guess is that Brooks will be the person to make that phone call. Noah Boyd at 7 foot and averaging 11 points and 8.5 rebounds per game. Another center that Kentucky, I think, could use if you're talking about depth pieces for next season. This is somebody that I would absolutely want to go and pursue. And this is kind of how I want to wrap up the show today, because this has been a conversation online that people have been having. There's been a contingency of Kentucky fans online that are really like freaking out, like that are losing their mind over Kentucky not getting things done in the portal. It's been like a week. It's been like a week tops that Mark Pope has been here. He doesn't even have all of his staff members like really going yet. He may add somebody else to the staff. Nothing is set in stone yet. It took Louisville, it took them 4 weeks to get 8 people to commit to their roster, and most of them came over from Charleston. Is that the roster you want to work with? I don't know. So Kentucky, Pope, they're taking their time. Like Pope has said, it's a selective process. And the reality of it, guys, is while Kentucky is definitely going to be in contention and will land some of these top portal prospects, they are not going to be able to get the best player or elite, like insane, like starter caliber, like could start anywhere in the country caliber players at every single position, all the way down to the 10th player in the rotation. It's just not going to happen. No team does that. So Kentucky is being selective. They are being decisive. They are being patient. And while they go through this process, they are still going to pick up players. But you are going to see, I think, Kentucky get 7 to 8 players that are really, really good, that are like top of the line. They fit the criteria, and they're going to play really, really well, right? Then you're going to have somewhere between 2 to 3 players to round out the rotation, like Boyd, who are going to be pieces for the future or are going to just be depth pieces. You're going to see Kentucky get a kid in the portal that was only averaging 5.5 points and a couple of rebounds and was maybe a rotational piece on a Power 5 or a Power 6 school from a season ago. You're going to see Kentucky dip in and get a couple of those guys to round out the roster. Not everybody's going to be Superman. There's going to be some sidekicks in here, and we just need to accept that. That also does not mean that we shouldn't accept Kentucky getting no Superman on their squad, which they already have 2. I just want to be very clear. They got 2. They've got 2 studs defensively in Amari Williams and Lamont Butler. So it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, and this weekend is going to be super, super awesome. So again, I want to remind you guys, please subscribe to the show. We got 5 players visiting this weekend. I cannot wait to talk with you about them on Monday. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. I will see you all on Monday for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.